Hello, welcome to this parallel project training podcast on team management. We're using the APM PMQ syllabus for exams starting in September 2024. My name's Ruth Phillips and I'm joined today by Carmen Campos, who's one of Parallel's senior trainers. Welcome to the podcast today, Carmen.
Hello, Ruth. Good morning.
In all of the podcasts, we've been going back to the syllabus and having a look at what we're expected to know for the PMQ exam. Let's start off by having a look at this syllabus item on team management. The podcast is all about making sure that we understand that team management is the ability to work with team members and to create and sustain teams, which is really important because our projects won't get done unless we've got people working in teams to perform all of those tasks and to implement the plans that we've got. Now, we've got 3 learning outcomes, but I think, Carmen, we feel that it's probably better to take them a little bit out of order. So let's look at the second learning outcome first, which is all about knowing the characteristics and benefits of effective teams and teamwork. So tell me how I know the difference between a team rather than just some people.
A group of people. I agree with you. It makes more sense to start first thinking about what is a team. I'm going to quote a little bit what the APM says. It's a group of people working together in collaboration towards a common goal. A really good example is if you look at team sports, any football, basketball team, you could have the best individual players, you could have the stars, and then still not be a strong team. So a team will have clear roles and responsibilities. They will have good communication. They will be focused on the same goal. And it's not easy, especially these days, because some teams may be together in the same geographic area or the same office, but they may not. So it's quite important for a leader to be able to build an effective team and maintain it.
Giving that example of a sports team, I think we can all think from our own experience, whether it is something that we do for leisure or something that we're working on, part of our projects or things like that, we can all understand that feeling that it is to be in a really good team where you really understand what you're contributing. There's great communication and we're all working towards something together, whether that is winning the football match or delivering a project.
Exactly.
So why is this important? Why is team management and this topic area important for us to understand to give us more successful projects?
Well, this is going to be fundamental for the success of the project, because if you work with a strong team, it's less likely to have conflict. Also, as people will be performing really well, they will be more proactive. They will be able to anticipate the problems. And when the problems occur, they will be good at problem solving because they will have mutual respect. People will be comfortable sharing ideas. And that also leads to innovation and creativity. If you have a team where there is trust, people is willing to listen to other views and ideas, you will be more likely to come up with creative solutions.
I've found that when you're working in a really strong team, that in our projects, things don't always go 100% to plan, and sometimes the team will come up against some difficulties. But if they've got that trust, if they've got that good communication, they're more motivated to be able to be proactive and deal with those difficulties as well. So in the good times in the team, a high-performing team will be more productive, as you said, come up with innovative ideas, but also in circumstances that are less than ideal, a great team can deal with them better, can't they?
And then that will help overcoming any setback. So it's not that we could control everything that happens on the project, but a strong team will be more likely to overcome those challenges. Yeah. Now, this sounds really good, but the problem is that in reality, we cannot always choose who we work with, and often team members will be chosen because of their particular technical skills or simply because they're available at the time where they're needed at the project. So as a leader, as a project manager, it's going to be really important to develop and lead those teams. For that reason, we cover different theories in this section that could help us leading and developing successful teams.
Yeah, we often think about some of the theories that we're going to talk about in just a moment as this way that we can select this wonderful high-performing team. But when you're in the real life work of a project, actually, it's I need somebody with these skills and I need somebody that's available on these days. And, oh, okay, well, this person is the only one that matches those. You haven't got the ability to choose from a whole cast of characters that you can put into your ideal team. And so we're often using the team development models to help us make a high-performing team out of people that maybe we wouldn't necessarily have chosen to go with that team.
Exactly. And I'm going to go back to the same example of sports, and then we could apply that into projects. So you may have a sports team with very talented individuals. So the same in projects. You may have a project team with very talented people, really experienced, fantastic expertise. But think about how many situations we may have a team like that and the project still fail to achieve their goals.
Yeah,
it's not because the people don't have the right capabilities. Sometimes it's because we didn't have the right range of abilities, or maybe we don't use people at their best. We don't use their strengths. And I'm not talking about technical strengths here. I'm talking about the more general aspects of the work. I'm talking about how good they are at coming up with ideas, getting things done, how they organize themselves.
Sport gives us so many examples of this, of where you've had a team of people that have just been pushed together and somehow they manage to, win the Olympics or win the World Cup. Even though they might not be the most skilled players, they've actually got a better team bond and a better performing team. They're able to use the strengths that they do have to the most effect. Whereas the collection of highly skilled individuals, they're not that effective as a team without the correct team leadership and team management. It's an interesting subject.
It is. And a lot of psychologists have developed theories and models that could help us. So we're going to talk about few of them today.
That takes us on to the next syllabus item. This is the very first one. It talks to us about making sure that we understand the different stages in the development of a team: creation, development, maintenance, and leadership, and understand factors that influence those stages. And then secondly, it's asking us to look at 6 models that are used to understand team development. Now, you feel that these models can be broken down into 2 buckets, essentially.
Yeah, I think there are 2 clusters, yeah.
So tell me about the first cluster that we're going to talk about. What are the 3 models that we're going to talk about first?
I think we should talk first about Belbin, Margerison McCann, and Myers-Briggs because they explore similar things. So perhaps we could just go one by one. Let's begin with Belbin and talk about what the model is about and maybe how we could use it practically. I don't know if you've done Belbin before, Ruth. Have you ever done this test?
I have, and I think people have got a bit of familiarity with Belbin. It's a simple questionnaire that you can do. I've used this quite effectively from that perspective of having a team almost given to me rather than being able to choose who's in that team, but to use it to really understand what roles people in this team actually prefer playing, to see if we've got any particular gaps. So rather than being able to select people because, you play this role, I play that role, I've actually used it to identify gaps in a team that's just been put together. So I think it's quite useful there. Tell me a little bit more about these roles I've been talking about, Carmen. What are they?
Yes, of course. So the key 9 Belbin roles are almost like into 3 categories. So people that is more like in a social role, like a resource investigator, a team working, or a coordinator, will be really good at working with people. They're the more thinking roles, like the plant, the monitor, evaluator, and the specialists are more like thinking people. And then the people that is more like action or task driven, the people really good at getting things done, implementing things are the shaper, implementer, and completer finisher. And it's interesting. I really like your example because funnily enough, I use it in a different way. We just got the team that we had, and the way we decided to do the Belbin role was more to try to understand which one we were closer to, because by understanding different ways of working, we could be more respectful, we could have more mutual understanding. Both of these purposes are the intention of Belbin.
I love the Belbin concept of each role having strengths, but also having allowable weaknesses.
Yes.
And I think that's really important, as you said, for that personal respect and understanding, that if you know that somebody is a monitor evaluator, you've got to allow them time to get into the detail. You can't just paint a big, nice vision and say, right, there we go, off you go. They've got to take a little bit more time to get into the detail. They're not being awkward. They're not trying to be difficult. That's just how they work better. And I think if the whole team has got that much better awareness of each other, and particularly the team leader, the project manager, has got that understanding, then they can allow people to carry out those tasks, and also to be able to allocate roles to people that really complement their strengths. So if you are a monitor evaluator, give the detail-oriented tasks, the checking, things to do with quality control, because that's something they'll really enjoy and they'll be very good at.
My favorite quote from Belbin is one that says, a good team leader will treat the members like actors on a stage. There will be exits and entrance, and not everyone is required to be on a stage at the same time. But then, for a play to be successful, the contribution of all the actors are crucial. So that's my favorite quote from Belbin.
I love that. And I think it gives such a good image. The cast of a play has to be a great team. Not everybody can shine. Not everybody needs to shine at the same times. But unless everybody's performing, then you're not going to enjoy the play. That's Belbin. Let's have a look at the next one, which is Margerison McCann. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So this was developed by Dr. Charles Margerison and Dr. Dick McCann, and is another psychometric tool, but in this case is measuring different aptitudes and personalities. So quite similar to Belbin. But in this case, instead of 9 roles, what they identify are 8 role preferences, and they plot it in a wheel. It's called the team management wheel. The questionnaire consists of about 60 questions to explore how the individual prefers to relate to others, how they gather information, how they make decisions, and how they organize themselves.
So have you got an example of using this on a project, Carmen?
Yes. There will be a deadline. Some people will be more, let's just drive this forward, whereas others will be, no, hold on, we need to pay attention to this and to that, but we need to keep moving. So it's about how do we work together? Why understanding your preference and you understanding the way I work can help us working more productively.
It's all about that balance, isn't it? Because both with Belbin and with Margerison McCann, we've got to have a good spread of those different roles in the team. You've got to have that balance between the people that might be more detail focused, want to go a little bit slower, and the people that want to push things along as well. And getting that balance makes a really good, productive project team.
Exactly.
Myers-Briggs is the third model in the first group. Tell me what Myers-Briggs is and how that was developed.
So this one was developed using a theory developed by Carl Jung on psychological types. So what Myers and Briggs did is they saw the potential for applying that to a real-world application.
Okay.
So they started building based on that theory. I think it was during the World War II. These days, fast forward, it has become one of the most extensively used modern psychometric tool by organizations.
People might be quite familiar with Myers-Briggs. Even if they're not familiar with Myers-Briggs as a term, they might know that they are, for example, an ESTJ or an INTP. Tell me what these letters mean and how this model actually works.
Sure. So the way this practically works is they split the acronyms of the letters into 4 pairs of preferences. So the first pair is how do you recharge and receive energy through people or just on your own? So you could be an extrovertive or an introvertive, E or an I.
Okay.
The second preference pair is how do you take information with? So you could be sensing, that's the S, or by intuition. You take information by your intuition.
Yeah. Okay.
The third preference pair is how do you come to conclusions? By thinking, the T, or feeling, F. And the last one is more your tactics, your approach to work, how you make decisions, which could be through judging, the J's, or perceiving, P. So you end up with 4 letters combined, which gives you a combination of up to 16 types of personality. So when you do your test, you will get results that sound something like ESFP, for example, and that gives you a description of your type of personality.
How's this helpful? Maybe both on an individual basis and also then importantly for our project manager. How can they use this knowledge?
So let's suppose I'm an introverted, for example, okay? So you may, as a leader, you may think that person may be working in an open office with full of people is not recharging you, is draining your energy. Some people just need to be on their own to like recharge and energize. So that person may prefer maybe to work in a quiet environment without too many people and may need some time on their own. So, for example, you may adapt the environment. You may allow that person to spend some time at home and do some activities.
Yeah. This was more of the personal, the individual's role or personality preference, whereas the other two look at those individual preferences within a team context. If you've got an understanding of each of your team members, it really does help you create a better team because you're able to work with their strengths, make sure you've got a balance.
This is the first cluster of 3 theories.
We've got the next 3, Hackman, Tuckman and Katzenbach and Smith. So let's have a look at these. First of all, why have you clustered these together? What are these models more useful for?
I think the first 3 were very useful in terms of getting to understand your nature, your different preferences, and also the different ways of working and strengths and weaknesses. Whereas these 3 applies more in terms of how do you get a team moving forward. So you may have a group of people, you now understand a little bit more their ways of working, how we can get them and maintaining them working together to be highly effective. So I think these 3 methods look at that in more detail.
Let's have a look at Hackman first of all. What's this model about?
So this one looks at team dynamics. So you need to make sure that the teams have everything they need. So it's about developing a good framework. It's about putting things in place for them to be effective. So they almost see the leader as the servant. It's about making sure you have the right things in place. And in particular, he said there are 5 conditions that need to be put in place. So the first one is to be a real team. You know, it's about not just a project team by name, but it's about developing a real team and having this sense of team ethos. Second one is about providing direction. A leader must provide direction and set very clearly that direction. Then you need to put a structure in place to foster teamwork in creating a collaborative environment. The organization must support that. So that's the 4th factor. If the organization is not supportive, the team is not going to be effective. And finally, coaching. So that's the 5th factor. Because by coaching, people will grow, people will develop, and people will want to do their best they can. These are the 5 conditions that need to be in place.
I think it's really interesting when I look at those 5 conditions. A lot of them actually link into other areas within the PMQ. So, for example, direction of the work must be clear. That's what we spend time planning and making sure that our PMP has got all of the information, so it's a single central source of information for everybody on the project. So that clarity and that direction and knowing where you sit within there.
We need to remember that we don't need to use all these models. So we cover 6 models in this section, but obviously we don't need to use all. They're not all perfect. They have strengths and they have limitations, but if we use it in a positive way to try to ensure that we have strong teams, then it's done its purpose.
So one that I think a lot of people are familiar with is Tuckman. That's the next one we're going to talk about. Talk me through what the Tuckman model is all about.
Yes, we're going to talk about the 4 stages of team development according to Tuckman. Then we'll have a chat about the 5th one, because sometimes there is also a 5th one. So let's cover the first core ones: forming, storming, norming, and performing.
Okay.
So forming, let's say when you start a project, you pull a group of people together, and then they just need to start getting their head around the project. It may be a good opportunity at this point to do some of these psychometric tests to try to understand different team personalities. But people will be seeking for direction. At the moment, we don't know too much about the other team members, about the project vision and objectives. So as we start getting a bit more clear, inevitably, there may be a period where there is some clashes or confrontations.
Yeah.
So that's the storming. That's the second one.
Yeah. Okay.
And conflict may arise. So the key thing for a leader is to make sure we go through the storming stage fairly quickly.
Absolutely.
We need to get a team into norming.
Using the Belbins, the Margerison McCann, the Myers-Briggs can really help you go through forming and storming more quickly, because having that awareness of yourself and the awareness of the roles and preferences of your fellow team members then helps explain those 2 stages that you go through. You can't skip them out. You will always go through them, but it helps explain it, and it helps move you through into norming as quickly as possible. So what happens in norming?
So in norming is when we start building that team spirit, that trust. Those characteristics we mentioned in the other learning outcome start developing. And the aim is to try to get into norming quickly. And even better, getting a high-performing team. So that's the 4th stage, where people could work independently. You know, leader may be able to take a step back because they will be proactively anticipating problems, being motivated. All these characteristics that we just outlined at the start, these are the characteristics of a high-performing team, which
Absolutely.
is the 4th stage. There is a 5th one, which is more, adjuring. Some people refer to that because sometimes it's quite hard. You know, if you work with a really high-performing team, you really get on with the other team members, and the project finish and the team disbands, it could be quite difficult for some individuals really to go through that stage. This is why sometimes it's mentioned as a 5th stage in the Tuckman.
A good team leader, a good project manager will understand that and be empathetic to the people within the team, and to think about that as the project's coming to an end. Let's have a look at our final model then. We've got Katzenbach and Smith. So what does Katzenbach and Smith tell us about teams and team development?
So Katzenbach and Smith recognizes that we need to consider some of the things that are very important to perform well as a team. This model is represented by a triangle, and each of the sides of the triangle will have different elements or behaviors that are required. The first one, they talk about having a reasonable small number in the sense of ensuring good communication. So the team need to have good communication, very frequent communication, very interactive discussions to complete the work effectively. The other factor represented by that triangle is the complementary skills. The third factor is meaningful purpose. So having same vision, aligned goals. The fourth factor is specific goals. So those goals need to be specific to ensure clarity. The fifth factor is a clear working approach. So everyone is clear about how we're going to be working, what are the working protocols, have absolutely clarity about different responsibilities. And the sixth one is sense of mutual accountability. We are all accountable for the success of the project. So if you don't have accountability for their work, then you're not going to build a strong team. So the three sides of the triangles are skills, accountability, and commitment. And then the three edges of the triangle are performance results, the collective products delivered, the work delivered, and the other is the personal growth.
I like this one because I think it considers the individual as part of the team as well. And that for you to feel good and succeed as an individual is important in helping the team succeed and deliver as well. That's quite an interesting model.
In the second model, they explain how that impact the way they develop. And they have also a team development model very similar to Tuckman.
Yeah.
So instead of forming, storming, norming, and performing, they call it working group, pseudo team, potential team, and then the real team that could really strive to a high performing.
Yeah, we've had a really good look at those 6 models. And, one thing I would say is there is so much information about each one of those models. So if you are interested in finding out more about them, then simply putting into a search engine each of those models, you'll find plenty of information in even some of the questionnaires that you can go through and do that analysis yourself. Just to summarize all of that, why is knowledge of some or all of those models going to help us as a team leader or a project manager?
So the key takeaway is that those models can help us not only understand the team dynamics and preferences and personalities, but also understand how we could support each other. And for a leader, how can you drive that team to be successful? So that's really the key takeaway.
If we go back to the syllabus again, you can clearly see how some of those models help us in the creation and the development of teams, how other models help in the maintenance of teams, and how understanding all of those different factors and those models can help us be good leaders within our teams as well. Our final syllabus item is looking at all of that and saying, right, so how can that help us lead teams that are quite common in the work environment that we work in today, virtual and hybrid teams, certainly since the COVID pandemic, and also due to the technology and the changes and performance of technology that we have today. Hybrid and virtual teams are the norm in projects now. And so it's really important to think about how we manage our team and lead our team can affect how they perform in those environments. I've got a couple of different questions here, Carmen, that I'm going to pose to you, and you're going to hopefully give me some ideas of how I can work as a team leader in this situation. So if we've got virtual teams that might never actually meet in person, or hybrid teams that are sometimes located, sometimes working from home, is how do we establish that trust? And also how we deal with conflict, which we will do when we go through the storming phase, when our teams are dispersed, when they're not co-located, when they're not physically there. What can we do to help that?
I think there are a number of things that the leader has to do proactively before the conflict escalates, and to develop that trust. So, for example, frequent team meetings, just keeping in touch. A combination of both formal and informal is an opportunity just to check in on people, especially those, we talk about extrovert and introvert earlier. Those who are introvert, maybe, more quiet, not able to contribute so much. So those regular checking points, regular meetings, more informal meetings, using the technology to your advantage. These days we have huge number of collaborative online options.
One of the things that we talk about in another podcast is about equality, diversity and inclusion. We are so blessed nowadays that we have got so many different cultures, backgrounds, ways of working within our teams. But that does often lead to cultural differences within a team. How can a leader use what we've been discussing to help overcome some of those cultural differences?
The first thing is really to celebrate those differences, is promoting diversity, is promoting the right behaviors within the team, and also show this appreciation and that curiosity for understanding a bit more the different cultures and backgrounds. If you lead by example and you encourage listening and you are open to other views and other perspectives, that is going to build trust at the same time. That's another consideration when working with remote teams, people from different geographies.
Definitely. Talking about remote teams and working with the different geographies, how do we deal with communication? How do we make sure that we've got open, synchronous communication when we're working across time zones, across different countries? What can we do as a leader to help that?
That could be a challenge for some of the leaders, especially if people is in a different time zone. It's not always possible to put a meeting at the time of the day where it's suitable. So back to the use of the technology, we need to use some of the communication tools to our advantage, but it's quite crucial as well to ensure that we agree the norms for communication. And we talk a little bit about that in the syllabus when we mention the communication plan. The leader will have to make very clear how we will communicate, when, the frequency, and choosing the right method, because we have a lot of choices. Understanding their preference, understanding what's the most suitable method of communication can help when you develop teams that work hybridly or virtually in remote locations.
Yeah. And finally, how can leaders facilitate contribution of all the team members?
That is an interesting one, because we talked about personalities earlier. Some people will be really good at participating. Other people may be quite shy, more reserved. And if you are in a virtual environment, in a virtual team, that person may be less confident to contribute, and they may have great ideas. So the leader needs to spot that and ensure that everyone has the opportunity to speak, and everyone's thoughts are taken into account, not just the people who speaks louder or talks more.
Yeah, we've covered all of those learning outcomes now, Carmen. We started off talking about the characteristics of effective teams and the benefits of making sure that our teams are working effectively together. We then had a look at those 6 different models. First 3 models, Belbin, Margerison McCann and Myers-Briggs, that were much more about personality profiles and the personalities required to have a balanced team. And then we looked at Hackman, Tuckman and Katzenbach and Smith, which were more models about team development stages. And we talked in detail about how they can really help us get an understanding of our team. And finally, we've discussed how all of that knowledge can help us working in a virtual or hybrid team situation. So that's quite a lot of
that was quite a lot,
team management. It is, yeah,
very
absolutely. Good. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your contribution there, Carmen, and I hope that everyone's enjoyed the podcast.
Thank you, Ruth. Bye-bye.
Bye.